Sash and I have been working really hard this spring to try to get a lot of different projects underway and nursery work and growing food and all that. And overall things have been working pretty nicely. But there have been so many interesting failures or issues or concerns or hopes that this would work out and it didn't. And I tend to not document those things all that much for the YouTube channel. I tend to focus on the things that are promising and exciting, and I think overall that's a nice picture because it gives people hope and ideas. But I think there's some real value in sharing with you all what isn't working, because I feel like a lot of people that are just getting into gardening, you're probably having issues just like we are, and you go on YouTube or you go on social media and you're just seeing beautiful rows of carrots and perfect transplants and everybody's right on top of their game. We aren't, we're trying, and so I'm going to share some notes about what isn't working so far this season. With the nursery, there's so many moving parts, especially tree seeds. They can be very tricky because they wake up when they're ready to. And so this winter, or last summer, I had collected well over 1,000 Nanking cherry seeds from fruit that we had enjoyed, put them all in a container of moist sawdust down in our root cellar. They woke up so early, so I transplanted them into one container, transplanted them into another, and then maybe 2 weeks ago, set them out into this bed. We tried to keep up with watering them, but there you go. That's what our Nanking cherries look like in this bed. They worked out in some spots, a few are holding on. We're hoping that by the end of the season, things work out in a much better way in some of the other areas. But there you go, 15 years of nursery work, and that's how I managed to grow Nanking cherries so far. We've set up rainwater collection. In fact, we're committed to basically working with just collected rainwater and little hand-dug wells. We aren't even into June yet, and we've been having this dry spell, and I realize I've woefully under-provisioned for how much water we have. So we've been already doling out water way less than we'd like to be. So that was a nice error on my part, is to not have the right scale of water storage for an early season drought. Hopefully we get some rain today. It's cooler, but boy, that's been stressful. Our greenhouse attached to our home did a really nice job over winter in a lot of ways in growing greens for us. We still have some nice greens in here, although pretty much all of them have bolted and are covered in aphids. So we're at this weird moment where we would like to have figured out what happens in this main bed already, because we're getting into the heat of summer, but we haven't done so. So basically we have a handful of floppy brassicas with some almost formed seed, but not quite. The cats love it though, and let's introduce you to Eleanor, a new friend. Hello, Mrs. Lady. Hi. Lots of lovely things going on, but not the most on top of our game as far as this greenhouse is concerned. But what are you gonna do?
At this point, the most productive part of this greenhouse is this row of catnip that actually came from some friends who came over and brought a gift from our cats, a tiny little pot from a grocery store of catnip, a zillion seedlings crammed into this one thing that I separated and planted out. You know, it's a kind of like disposable catnip that you could just put in your house for a little bit and then it will die, but you could also divide it and put it out, and they were tiny and now they're a nice druggy line. We made the decision to sell our setup of seed starting lights because we didn't want to go that route anymore if we can help it. So we've been trying to start the seedlings just in the cold frames, but it was a tough year. I had seeded everybody out as soon as I could in, I guess, April, and then we had a cold snap and I came out and all the nicely growing seedlings had been eaten by voles. So I started some again. They've been eating a couple rounds, and they're finally growing. I think when it gets these cold nights, the voles get panicked, and now they're finally going. We've just been keeping these grates over the plants because the cats were going in there and using it as a litter box temporarily.
Pro. With just so many moving parts in spring and early summer, this is what's become of our shed in the driveway. Some point in the very near future, I plan to actually clean this up thoroughly and then make an update video about how great it is, but this is what the reality is. I also meant to put a video out more recently around this new design for an air prune bed that so far has been growing hazelnuts beautifully. And the only challenge though, well, two of them, is that number one, I thought I had made something that was pretty darn secure as far as chipmunks go, but you can see everywhere that there's dark patches are somehow a chipmunk got into this and uprooted, maybe 200 or so baby hazelnuts. And then beyond that, now that the mesh is on there, the hazelnuts are starting to poke through that mesh. And so unless I can figure something out ASAP, they're gonna get stuck in the mesh and have an issue. So it doesn't feel great to be doing this, but we're using these traps to catch and kill the chipmunks so we can feed our cats. Stanley in particular really loves chipmunk as a food. Would not be ideal. I think what I need to do is put in the time and energy to build more air prune beds that are definitely just fully rodent resistant, but our livelihood depends on these trees working out. And so that's, to me, an unfortunate part of this season, is resorting to killing little creatures in order to be able to grow these plants. But we're not poisoning them, and our cats are able to eat them. So it's a trade-off that I'm willing to do for now, that I don't feel psyched to share, but it's the truth. Here's our germination rate so far on Schisandra, Udo, and Seaberry. I thought I had cold stratified them in moist sawdust in the root cellar to perfection. Maybe they're slow germinators? I wonder. But in other spots, things are working beautifully. These are all super cold hardy Siberian apricots that are growing like mad. Same issue though with that mesh on top. I've got to think something through. Lots of little chestnuts popping up in this box as well. They're at a really nice height for this early in the season, so hopefully they grow into beautiful young trees. We'll be making a bunch more videos showing some projects that have worked beautifully for us, some experiments that feel very promising and worth sharing, maybe worth repeating. But I just thought it would be a nice little break from those sorts, or that sort of content, to show what really hasn't worked out so far this season, or what is kind of floundering and going along. I think it's a more real picture. I know it's more honest to share those sorts of things with folks. It's a little good hit to the ego. And I hope for some of you that are just getting into gardening, or are seeing so much content of how beautiful and perfect gardens can and should be, that folks that have been doing it for a while, I mean, I've been at this for 15 years and I still make massive errors every single year and have some great successes. If you're just getting into it, expect things to not work out sometimes, and that you can learn from them as you go, or hopefully you do. Anyway, thank you all so much for being part of our community and for watching our blooper reel of permaculture gardening.